Hello, my name's Neil Bradley, Executive Vice President and Chief Policy Officer at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and welcome to the fifth in our series, Common Grounds, where we bring a Republican and Democratic leader together over a cup of coffee to talk about some of the most pressing issues facing our nation. Today is a special edition of Common Grounds because it's done in conjunction with the Chamber's Talent Forward program, where we're spending the day looking at the issues affecting our workforce, our educational systems, and how we help every American become the best that they can be in life and in education. I especially want to thank our friends at Campus Coffee for continuing to help promote this series and help us put it on. They put the grounds in our Common Grounds event. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Compass Coffee, you can check them out at one of their 12 locations in the Washington, D.C. area. Founded by two Marines, it's one of the traditional success stories of American small business that we hear about all across this great country. Today, I'm honored to be joined by two distinguished leaders, one from the Senate, one from the House, one from the Democratic Party, one from the Republican Party. They have diverse backgrounds, but they share a common passion when it comes to education and workforce training issues. Today, we're joined by Senator Bill Cassidy from Louisiana. He served in the Senate representing his state since 2014 and joined after an illustrious career in the House of Representatives. He is a physician by training, and he's a Republican. We're also joined by Representative Raja Krishnamoorthi, who comes from Illinois. He represents the outside areas of Chicago. He's a Democrat. He served in state government and now federal government. We're excited to welcome both to the stage. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having us. I really appreciate it.
So
I'm always amused whenever anyone calls me distinguished. I figure right off the bat, you're losing your credibility.
Well, we're happy to share it. So we start every one of these conversations with the toughest question of all. Are you a coffee drinker? And if so, how do you take it?
Raja, you go first.
Hey, well, thank you so much for having both of us on. And yes, I am a coffee drinker. One of my staffers suggested that our office mantra be rise and grind. And so, yes, I love coffee, and I take it with cream and sugar. I joke and I say, if you can make it look like this color, then we're on to something. So we're good.
Senator, how about you?
I drink about 10 cups a day. Now, whenever I started pre-med, I have ADD. I couldn't focus on anything, so I started pounding down coffee. My mother at the time, my mother told me at the time, if you don't like coffee, learn to drink it black. That way, when you're old and you need to lose weight, you won't have to give up cream or sugar. It was the best advice. I eventually learned to love it. I don't drink caffeinated coffee now because, it's just better for my marriage. I have 1 cup of caffeine in the morning, and the rest of the day I drink decaf coffee. In my younger, wilder days, truly wilder days, though, I would drink 10 cups a day, and life was pretty rocking and rolling.
Coffee does that to you. I have to admit, my coffee addiction started on Capitol Hill. I was an intern, also for a physician member of Congress. And my first job every morning was to get up early and make the grinds and make coffee. Because Lord knows we didn't want anyone coming in without the option of being caffeinated. So let's jump into today's topic. I mentioned at the outset that you come from different political parties, different backgrounds. You approach issues often very differently, but yet both of you have seized on an issue around access to information about educational outcomes. And you've both been working together kind of in pursuit of policy solutions in this particular area. I'm curious what led you to your interest in this issue and why you think it's important. So, Senator, we'll let you go first.
Yeah, so obviously your title of this is double entendre, common ground. Raj and I, one, he's got friends and family in Louisiana, and so we've spoken before and have a bit of a connection. But two, I think we both would say that we want the individual American to have the power to make the best choice for his life or her life. And when it comes to education, right now, the educational establishments have almost all the power. You're 18 years old, you can borrow all kinds of money. You can get these Pell Grants, and people inundate you with things trying to appeal to you to come to their school. And you're not aware that if you go into this curriculum, you'll end up $250,000 in debt, working in a coffee shop because your degree is effectively worth nothing. Nothing against working in a coffee shop, but when you graduate with $250,000 in debt, you might want a little bit more. Versus if you go to this place, which might be a lot less expensive, into a curriculum which might be a little bit more difficult, but ultimately you're going to make a lot more money. So we are united in that. We want that young 18-year-old or that older 30-year-old to have all the information she needs to make the choice best for her future. And so much depends upon it. We're united there. Raja, I think I'm speaking for you, but I think I'm speaking correctly.
Should I jump in?
Please do. Yes.
Hey, the senator is absolutely 100% correct. He and I share the exact same view about this, which is, folks need to understand exactly what the outcomes will be for the education that they are about to embark on. And oftentimes it's an expensive education and an expensive proposition so that they can make an informed choice. And I think that if they don't have that information, they end up with some bad consequences potentially. One is what the senator said, which is you could end up in a job that doesn't fit your degree or what you purchased, and then you end up with a lot of debt. And you may end up in a situation where, you have all this debt hanging around your neck, but it becomes an albatross for the entire economy because you are more likely to not have a high-paying career. You are less likely to start a household, get married, buy a house, do all the things that we need to have the economy humming. The last thing I would just say is employers also don't get the benefit of your talents if you went down the wrong track and not the one that maybe allows you to realize your best potential and where your talents and passions might lie. And so we continue to have a huge skilled labor shortage as a consequence. So there's a lot of things that happen when people pursue the wrong career track because they don't have the information to pursue the right one.
So your former colleague, Congressman Paul Mitchell, was really passionate about this issue. And, sadly, he passed away this past summer. But frankly, up until his death, he was preaching this message. And he found colorful ways of saying it. One of my favorites was that it's easier today to find out more information about the quality and reliability of a washing machine than it is to find meaningful information about degree and college program outcomes for a meaningful career. How do we fix that? How do we change that? What needs to change in the system so that we have more information about one of life's biggest decisions than we have about the quality of a washing machine? Congressman, how do we fix this?
Well, thank you for mentioning Paul Mitchell. He was a dear friend of mine, and you're right. Very up until his very day that he departed us, he was very concerned about this issue of people having as much information as possible to make a good informed decision about their future and the purchase of their education. And I think the way that we fix this is by removing any impediments that are in the law that prevent educational institutions, including four-year colleges, community colleges, trade schools, and the like, from being able to publish student outcome data by major, by college, all the things that you would otherwise need to make a good decision in buying an education. And today, believe it or not, there are laws on the books that ban or prevent educational institutions from doing just that.
So if there's ever been a time when a set of regulations favors the seller, if you will, and not the purchaser, it's now. What Raja just said. By the way, all the information is there, already collected by the federal government. It is just not presented in a coherent fashion to the student. So we have the College Transparency Act that would allow an online search to be made easily to compare schools. One example of just the power of this. There's a school in Georgia that follows, I don't know, 60 different or maybe more factors on every one of their students. They have eliminated racial disparity in graduation rates. They have found that there might be a young person who is $500 short of their last semester of tuition. If they forgive that $500, the person graduates. If they don't forgive it, the person drops out, has all the debt, not the degree, and the trajectory of their life, instead of like this, is like that. I like to tell folks, every student should be able to look in a mirror, whatever he or she looks like, whatever their socioeconomic background, whatever their, you name it, they should be able to go online and say, I am a white guy who is 18 years old from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and my parents have this median income and this educational achievement. If I enter this curriculum at this university, I will, on average, borrow this much money, have this much debt, and make this much when I graduate. If I go to this university in this curriculum, I will have that much debt, and I'll earn that much, and I'm less likely to graduate, period. The student should know that. And that's when we give power to the student. And the fact that they don't have it, I think, is an indictment of our current system.
So I'll play devil's advocate here for a moment, because not everyone has come to the conclusion that both of you all have come to. And one of the arguments that we hear is around privacy. So how do you protect student privacy but still solve this problem?
First, Raja, I'll go first this time.
Go ahead.
First, the federal government already collects this information. All you're doing is amalgamating it from different sources. And then it's presenting. And you can de-identify the data. It's not like, hey, it's Bill Cassidy who went to LSU and you can see how Bill did. No, they just take everybody that looks like me, everybody that looks like you, like Raja, like you name it, and they de-identify, present that. I find oftentimes privacy is an important issue, really important. But usually when people are throwing up things like privacy and it's de-identified data that's already being collected, they're really concerned about money. And they really, either they don't understand the issue, or two, they're concerned about money and the fact that their university may not fare well. I hate to be cynical, but when you look at the default rate on student loans, how many people drop out after getting their Pell Grant, et cetera, the current system is not working well. The taxpayer's on the hook. The student who drops out is on the hook. We need to do better.
Congressman?
No, the senator said it absolutely right. We're talking about we're basically talking about data that has been. So let's give you an example so that your viewers know exactly what we're talking about. Let's say we're trying to get an accounting major at the University of Illinois, and let's say that we are a veteran, and the veteran wants to know how much do veterans who attend University of Illinois trying to get an accounting major make. Well, what the University of Illinois does is they will provide the data in an aggregate form for all the veterans who went through the accounting course at the University of Illinois, and then give the average salary for those particular veterans. It does not say what veteran A or veteran B earned. And so it's really anonymous in terms of the data that's afforded, and it doesn't really reveal individual data, which obviously is a concern, and we should all be concerned about that. I would just add that, as the senator pointed out, a lot of this data is already collected, and so we can anonymize the data and make sure we can double scrub it and make sure that we don't reveal unintentionally anyone's particular details. But there are ways to get around this issue and still provide people with the information that they need to make a good purchase decision.
So I want to go back to something, Senator Cassidy, because I think you've solved the privacy challenge, and I want to thank you both for tackling that head on. When we talk about this a lot, we think about it from the talent acquisition standpoint, making sure that people are on a good career pathway. But Senator Cassidy raised something that I thought was kind of interesting: the ability to use this type of information to solve other problems, to target graduation rates, to close disparities. Is there talk a little bit about some of the other benefits that frankly we might see just in personal and societal outcomes if we simply made this information public?
Should I jump in on this one, Senator? It's the benefit of competition. I mean, think about the galloping rate of tuition at all of our schools, whether they're state schools or private schools across the spectrum. And parents and students are just wondering, where does this end? Well, think about what happens when you start to give people data and the marketplace starts to understand, what are the actual outcomes associated with purchasing this major at this college. Again, taking Illinois, for instance, University of Illinois has wonderful majors, wonderful student outcomes. And so I would like to see those, measured against perhaps another private school in another state that perhaps Illinois residents are attending for the same degree. I'd also like to see how community colleges do for these exact same degrees at a much lower cost. Now, once you have those outcomes on the table, it's going to be very hard for another institution to charge maybe 2 or 3 or 4x what a community college charges for the exact same degree if the outcomes are the same, or even if they're better at the community college. So that's one thing that I think you're going to start to see, which is all of a sudden there's going to be some market discipline brought to higher education prices. The other thing is I think employers are going to benefit by knowing which schools are producing the best outcomes for certain degrees that they are trying to hire in. And so I think it really helps the students, it helps the employers, and it will really, to me, it's going to be the great leveling of the playing field in higher education. I don't know. What do you think, Senator?
Totally with you on that. And it's a way to transmit market information to the student. So, for example, if a student graduates in nursing and she's going to go to a community college program, maybe get her bachelor's at a state school, so she's going to end up with $20,000 in debt, but she's going to make $80,000 to $100,000 when she graduates. The market is sending the information that nursing is far more valuable at this point. On the other hand, if she decides to major in gender studies and spend $50,000 a year between tuition and books and travel, etc., she could end up $200,000 in debt. And unless she goes to graduate school, there will not be a job in which she uses her degree. So the market is doing a feedback, giving her the information that she needs to make the best choice. Now, she may decide to go into it, but into gender studies because she's terribly interested in it. But she'll go in with her eyes wide open and not feel kind of tricked at the end when she doesn't get a job and she has all this debt. So I'm totally with Raja. This is the way the market speaks to the individual. And frankly, it is how the universities begin to align their curriculum, because you create demand. Boy, nurses are doing great. I'm going into nursing. You're going to expand your number of nursing slots if you wish to keep on getting those students. So I think it's that virtuous cycle that information leads to.
Well, we're in the middle of college football season, and I can't help but think, I was imagining LSU and University of Illinois or my Oklahoma Sooners, but I couldn't help but thinking about during this conversation that I feel like I have more information about our college football teams and their statistical records than we do about the education that we're all actually paying for. And that's something that's got to change. So I want to give you each 30 seconds to close out here. But before I do, I just want to say thank you. When we created the Common Ground series, the whole idea was finding these issues where people could set aside partisan differences, could even work across House to Senate, Senate to House to help solve some of our nation's problems. And both of you have done that in spades today. So, Congressman, we'll go to you for any last thoughts before we wrap up today.
Well, I just want to say a special thank you to you, the chamber. I want to say a special thank you to my good friend, Senator Cassidy, who just does a terrific job collaborating with us on this and other workforce development issues. This to me, I was a small businessman before I came to Congress, ran a very small company. And one of our toughest challenges was finding talented people to take the positions that we had. And I think the irony of today's economy is that we have roughly 7 million people who are unemployed, and we have almost 10.5 million job openings. And so, long term, as we try to match people with the jobs that are in demand, we have to make sure that they have all the data necessary to purchase the education that's best for them, and that's also in demand. And I think that, as the senator said, I think more data is always better than less. And I can't wait for the day that we actually have a website where people can just search in an easy to use manner for the best education for themselves, and thereby unlock their full potential as men, women, and as Americans. Then we will unlock America's true potential, in my humble opinion.
Hey, Raja, I'm totally in agreement with everything you said. Neil, I'll add this. The College Transparency Act is merely a means by which we can lower the cost of education, make it more likely that someone graduates with a degree which earns them money, and they have a fulfilling life. The aggregate of that will benefit our society. But let's not, maybe there should be another, but there's another such session as this, but there's other ways to achieve that as well. There are high schools in Louisiana where the student can graduate certified as an emergency medical technician, or as a nurse's assistant, or as a welder. And I could go on. It's dual enrollment in community or technical colleges. They graduate with the ability to earn significant dollars as they work towards their next degree. There's dual enrollment regimes, not just for so-called, these sorts of skill sets, but you can go get your college calculus out of the way. So I do think we need to think globally, aggressively, about how do we lower the cost of education for the students and get them on a track where they're actually making real dollars in something which they enjoy doing. College Transparency Act is one of those things. There's others as well. That's our challenge. We have to address that challenge.
Well, Senator, I think you may have found our next topic for our next Common Ground series. I just want to, on behalf of the chamber, thank both of you for stepping out and leading in this effort, to demonstrating how our elected leaders can come together and solve problems. And, put us in, Coach. We want to help try to get this done and help solve this problem on behalf of the American people. To our audience, join me in thanking Senator Cassidy and Congressman Krishnamoorthi. Thank you for your work. Everyone who's tuning in today, follow these guys, follow up on what they're doing. Make sure you understand the positive developments that's being made in this and so many other issues on Capitol Hill. A special thanks to our friends at Compass Coffee, and please join us again next time for our next Common Ground series. Have a great day.
Thank you both. See you, Roger.
Thank you.
See you, Neil.
Thank you.